Hi, I'm Marvin Plackett, and today is Thursday, June 18th. Greetings to all residents, to all staff, and to all guests. I'm pleased to report that once again we have no new cases of COVID-19 at Episcopal homes. So that means that we remain at a total active COVID case count of 6. 2 are residents and 4 are staff. And those 2 residents are on our dedicated COVID-19 unit. Both those residents were from Matilda House at the Gardens. And our staff, of course, those 4 that still are the active cases, they of course are not scheduled and will not be scheduled until they are completely free of the virus and are released to come back to work. Some of you may have heard the story on Minnesota Public Radio this morning. I happened to hear it somewhere around 7:15. It was a discussion about nursing homes in Minnesota. And they focused on a couple of different settings. And one was a nursing home that was only just a few miles away from Episcopal homes. And their case count was dramatically different than ours. Somewhere around 80 residents and 50 staff were affected. And it does show that a number of the things that we are doing really make a difference. The number of things that you are doing really make a difference. If we go back to June 1st, that is when we topped out with our case count of 22 on June 1st. And that was 10 residents and 12 staff. And what a difference of 22 versus 130. And that organization, they have roughly the same number of nursing home beds as Episcopal homes. So it's sort of comparing similar sizes. We got our first case much later than them, and of course our peak was much lower than theirs, and we're very pleased, of course, that our case count is already down to just 6. And so while I feel very good about the numbers, when we compare them to other nursing homes, when we compare them to many of our colleague organizations, I feel excellent about our numbers. I feel excellent about the things that it takes to keep those good numbers. At the same time, I say these words with a great deal of caution and a great deal of humility, because we can never become complacent. We can never become arrogant that we're so good that we are invincible, because that's absolutely not the case, because none of us knows the future. And what we do know is that the action steps that each one of us takes by following the rules of social distancing whenever possible, a minimum of 6 feet apart, by wearing our masks anytime when we're not in our apartments or in our units, by frequent hand washing. Those measures play a vital role in keeping us safe. And so we can never become complacent. We must always be vigilant. That is really our best method as we stand today and as we look ahead to the future. None of us knows how long this is going to last. And so vigilance really is the key operative word. Testing at the Gardens. So earlier this week, Walter House and Matilda House were completely tested, all residents and all staff. All resident tests have been returned, and they're all negative. Very pleased about that. And we have some of the staff tests back, and they are negative, other than the ones that I reported in previous days. Then there's a few more staff tests that are yet to be received, but we're very pleased about that. And then just a reminder that at the Gardens, all of the houses in the Gardens, so all 6 houses, will be tested Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. That is the 23rd and 24th of June. And that will be all residents and all staff throughout the Gardens. Even though Walter House and Matilda House were tested this week completely, they're going to be retested again next week when the entire nursing home of the Gardens is tested. Some of you are going to very soon be finding out. Just this morning, the Minnesota Department of Health, they released a multiple page document on outdoor visitation guidance for long-term care facilities, meaning skilled nursing facilities and assisted living. So like I said, it's 3 pages actually in length, very detailed instructions that's provided to organizations such as Episcopal Homes. And so in the coming days, you will be seeing information, relatives of residents here at Episcopal Church Home, at the Gardens, and Iris Park Commons. You will be seeing information in the coming days about specific ways that we're going to be implementing these policies. This is effective currently, however, it is going to take a few days for us to figure out exactly how to implement each one of these guidelines. And so, like I said, in the not too distant future, in a few more days, you'll be receiving additional information, and that information will also specify when it will begin at Episcopal Church Home, when it will begin at the Gardens, and when it will begin at Iris Park Commons. They may be a little bit different because they have different challenges based on the guidelines that are spelled out here by the Minnesota Department of Health. So I know you'll be watching for that information, and we'll answer your questions as they may indeed arise. Yesterday, you might have heard Mike Osterholm, Dr. Mike Osterholm. He's an epidemiologist at the University of Minnesota. He's been on been interviewed, of course, over the years, over the decades, really, on many TV stations and by many radio stations. And it was a very good interview, and you may want to track down that. Again, it was on National Public Radio yesterday. And Mike Osterholm in particular focused on the key things that we've talked about: social distancing and wearing masks. Those predominantly, and then frequent hand washing. Those things is what he really focused on in all of us doing our best to keep one another safe. Okay, today is Thursday. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow at 1:30. And now for some closing words from Phil Rose.
Good afternoon. It's been a little while since I've been with you here, and I hadn't seen Marvin with his haircut. He looks 10 years younger. Looks good. Well, as most of you know, or almost all of you probably know, my mother passed away on June 8th here at the Gardens. And it gave me the opportunity to experience firsthand what it's like to lose someone in the midst of a pandemic. And it's very, very difficult. And I first want to thank everyone here at Episcopal Homes, the staff, the residents, and our wider Episcopal Homes family, former families that had residents here, and volunteers who have surrounded me with a lot of love and support. I noticed there are 2 cards waiting for me right now that people have really shown their love for us. And I think that's really, really important at a time like this. Because the normal rituals that we do around a funeral or around a death we don't have access to those right now. We don't have big funerals. We don't have the big rituals of a wake or a visitation where we can gather. And we don't have the smaller rituals of that important hug or the food that we bring to one another in the midst of these things. So it is very, very difficult. And I want you to know that as a spiritual life team, we are holding all of you who have suffered that kind of loss, we're holding you in our prayers. And as a friend of mine would say, and that's not nothing. So it's important that you know that we are praying with and for you in the midst of that. And also not just for the big losses like death, but also for all of the losses that seem to be mounting up for us. The loss of being able to go to a grandchild's graduation, or a Little League game, or a birthday, or an anniversary celebration, or Mother's Day or Father's Day. So we want you to know that we're holding you in prayer, and we are, along with other parts of the organization, doing as much as we can to make life enjoyable and fun by having things on the Channel 3 and Channel 6.1 and channel 7.1 and 3.1 and 3.2. So you have to check out all those new channels so that you know that you are cared for. Well, along with my mom, Jean Rose, there were 5 other people who have died in the last 2 weeks. And I want to make sure that we honor them here today. So, these are the folks that have died within the last couple of weeks. Nora Davidson, who lived in Gilbert House. Jogs Epley, who also lived in Gilbert House. Mildred Connolly, who lived at IPC, and Chi Hiao, who lived at King's Crossing, and John Galadowicz, who also lived in the Gardens. May light perpetual shine upon them, and may those who mourn them be comforted. Thank you for listening, and I will be back tomorrow at 10 o'clock for the Episcopal service, and Brandon will be here at 3:30 for Good Afternoon with Spiritual Life.